This video is sponsored by Terrell Hutton, who makes the invisible investable. Today on the CEO Barbecue, advanced stage gold and copper exploration in Kazakhstan, together with Arras minerals. But if you're short on time, subscribe to our free newsletter, and once a week, we'll send you a 5-minute summary of all interviews we put out. resourcetalks.com for a free weekly newsletter. Now, although this company has paid us for the production of this video, you should still understand that we are not financial advisors, and this is not intended as financial advice. It is a broad, general, and impersonal piece of information intended only for those who know and understand the risks of junior mining, of which there are many. Before moving on, read the company's official filings on setterplus.ca and do your own due diligence. Pause the screen and read all the disclaimers I've shown you because your capital is at risk. If this isn't clear, go to the last section of this video for a longer explanation of the risks and biases, and do not consume this content if you don't agree with everything said therein. Moving on, this is not Arras' first time on the CEO Barbecue, so if it's your first time hearing about the company, I'm going to post a link to a playlist that's going to contain all the previous interviews that I've done, as well as my site visit. So if you want to see what it's actually on the ground in Kazakhstan, I went there, did a long documentary on it, and it's in that map as well that you can go and watch. In a nutshell, though, Arras Minerals' flagship asset is the Elemis project in northeastern Kazakhstan, in the Pavlodar region more specifically. And it's sitting on a mineralized trend that runs parallel to the operating Bozhikol copper and gold mine that's roughly 30 kilometers away, which I'm not going to stop showing off, by the way, because I went to see that one as well, though just from afar, but I did see it. The deposit style is a classic porphyry. It's a copper gold porphyry here with associated high-grade hydrothermal breccias. And drilling so far has outlined at least 3 centers along about a 10-kilometer strike length at Beresky North, Beresky Central, and Beresky East. And right now, there are 4 diamond drills turning on the ground, pushing on an expanded 40,000 meter program that they want to finish by the end of this year. And that's after they already completed more than 18,000 meters in 2026. There's also a 6,000 meter top of bedrock program that just finished in May, but only a handful of the 2026 holes and assays have been announced, with the most eye-catching one to date being a 936 meter apparent width interval from surface, averaging about 0.71% copper equivalent. That includes narrower high-grade breccia zones, which of course I'll be asking a lot about later on in the conversation. Now, for some of the numbers and a bit of the details, Arras is listed as ARK, so that's ARK on the TSXV, where the average 3-month volume is about 350,000 units. Stock's 52-week high is $2.07, and its 52-week low is 53 cents. With a market cap of just under 215 million Canadian dollars and just under 145 million shares outstanding, today this is a $1.59 stock with a 50 and a 200-day moving average at respectively 141 and 92 cents, which means that this is actually one of the few stocks in junior mining this summer that is now trading above both of those trend indicators. The last time they raised money was recently, it was last month. They brought in about 25 million Canadian dollars through the issuance of about 18 million common shares at $1.36. No warrants with that financing. And as a matter of fact, there are no warrants outstanding now at all from prior financings either. And there are only about 3.7 million options outstanding. That's combined with the RSUs and DSUs. All in all, right now, they've got about $31 million. So where's that money going to be going besides the 40,000 meter program? Because that program is not going to eat up all of it. And when are those assays from that program coming in? Those are all questions that I'll be asking later on in the conversation. But for this to actually become a conversation, though, I will unfortunately have to shut up already. And Darren and Tim, I'll give you the word here. But first of all, thank you both for sitting down with me today.
Great to be here, Antonio.
It's funny though, because it's 8 o'clock in the morning for you, Darren. It's 8 o'clock in the evening for you, Tim, and I'm somewhere in between. So we'll see who's got the highest levels of energy here. Last time we sat down for an interview was the 3 of us. It was in Vancouver earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, and then the time before that was again on site. So I think this is Darren, you and I spoke about the jurisdiction not too long ago, but this is our first long form Zoom interview, really at a distance. So let's maybe start off with the elephant in the room here, which is your stock price performance. As I mentioned in the interview, since both of those interviews, your stock price is up, but most notably since Vancouver, the stock is up actually, depending on like from low to high, it's up like 4 times. It's about two times since I was talking to you in Vancouver, though. Market cap is up even more since this financing now. Is the tempo here sustainable, though? Do you have enough catalysts in the pipeline to keep the stock going that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's right. It was January of earlier this year, and I think in some regards, if we kind of turn the clock back a little bit further back to early last year when we had the first results from Elmas, so call it 19 months ago, which is not a long time in the broader sort of exploration space. We were probably an outperformer, in the first part of last year against the peer group. And then, to be fair, we probably underperformed the broader peer group, I think, particularly with the precious metals price moving up. The gold and silver names, I think, did very well. And when you were here in January, silver price went through $100, and there was lots of euphoria, in the junior space. Obviously, lots of money being raised as well. I mean, the investment banks have been pretty busy raising lots of capital, particularly in that precious metal space. And then here we are now 6 or 7 months later, and obviously things have pulled back fairly significant. I think silver's at $59, gold's, touching 4,000. It's not through 5,000. And, equally you've seen, the volatility in the share price, from many of the peer companies. Yet, we've kind of kept our nose to the grindstone, and we've kind of just kept with the same strategy and being really methodical about our exploration and our strategy going back to the first results 19 months ago. We raised capital, expanded the program last year, went from one drill to two drills. Now we've got four drills going. We just expanded this program again within the back of this financing where we've doubled it this year. And so from a catalyst perspective, I think we're really just getting started here. We've got 33 holes reported over roughly, call it a 15 to 20 square kilometer area. And we're finding a lot of metal, throughout that entire area. So this is early days, when it comes to, exploration, and Tim can talk about that as well. But catalyst wise, I think as we've continued to ramp up, be methodical, raise capital, and now we're deploying it, like we're just getting started.
Well, let's maybe do a bit of.
And I think just.
Oh, pretty. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
I was just going to add to that. What our drilling has found is something that's quite rare and scarce in our business, which is long intercepts starting at surface. Yeah. Which I think is all the easy stuff's been found. So for us to be touching in on this with our current drill program, I think is really part of the story and what the market is starting to understand as well.
I do want to know more about that, but people listening should also want to know more about Tara Hutton, who doesn't only make the invisible investable, but they've made this video free of YouTube ads by sponsoring it. Tara Hutton is built for the people who are tired of going through boring PowerPoint decks and geological jargon when they're analyzing mining companies. It's a digital platform where the data, the story, and the context sit together so mining investors can use visuals to understand the why without needing a geology degree or a week off work. And if you're on the company side, it's a great way to present your project like a serious operator with everything investors keep asking for in one place. Contact them at terrahutton.io. But it might also be useful to kind of talk about exactly so those things that you're touching upon and maybe do a bit of a summary. Like, what have you done for shareholders since we last spoke at the beginning of the year? Obviously, the stock price performance is due to one of the holes that I highlighted in the overview in large part, but not only. There have been multiple things happening. So, yeah, what have you done for shareholders here in the last 7 or 8 months?
I'd probably actually comment that, when the air was coming out of the tires on a lot of the space, through sort of the back end of the first quarter and into the second quarter, we were actually holding up pretty well. I think, like we had the capital that we needed. We indicated when we raised capital last year, we had adequate capital to see us through the program through this year. And in fact, the drilling's gone very well. We'll talk probably a little bit later with regards to the assay labs, being definitely a lot slower this year than last year. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there's a lot more core in assay labs around the world getting assayed now, given the capital that's been raised in the junior space. And so, for us, we probably didn't see that same sort of volatility from a share price perspective. And from a technical perspective, I mean, we've been trying to deliver on what we said we were going to do. We raised capital last year. We said it was enough capital to see us through to the back end of this year. We went from 2 drills to 4 drills. We got uncovered additional targets. And we're executing on that. So, I think from a shareholder perspective, we're trying to keep it simple. It's still an exploration game. Tim and I talk about that every week. At the end of the day, we're still getting lots of surprises through the drills. But when you don't have geology that presents itself at surface, and you've seen that yourself, Antonio, there's not much that's obvious. You have to really apply the science, have a bit of luck, and be methodical about it.
Especially that former part or latter part, have a little bit of luck. Even a lot is needed most of these times. From those things, the other elephant in the room, if you will, it's a pretty packed room. We've got multiple elephants that we got to address here. But so you've drilled quite a bit. You're drilling more now, and we'll definitely talk about that too. But only 4 holes are out there assayed out of the 27. I think in total what did you say? 30? How many holes do you say you've drilled so far?
We've reported on 33, but yeah, there's more than 20 that are still either in the lab or on their way, or somewhere in between.
Yeah. So how come? I mean, it's slower, I think, than last year. Definitely slower than expected. So I guess the assays are backed up, but you're a pretty big client right now. So couldn't you rush it? And yeah, talk to me more about timing here.
Tim, do you want to take that one? Yeah.
Yeah, we actually just had the guys go and visit the lab yesterday to kind of get to the bottom of why things are taking so long. The ALS told us they're expecting to analyze 1 million samples this year here in Kazakhstan, and that's up from about 500,000 the year before. So they've had a massive expansion, and I think they're struggling. So to that end, I think we've just been caught up in that as well, and I think it speaks to a healthy mining industry, and lots of people are in Kazakhstan doing a lot of drilling. So it's a net positive, but it's also frustrating to have this taking as long as it is. So there are solutions to it, though. So one of the solutions, and we're looking into it when I go up to site tomorrow, is can we do sample prep on site, and then we're shipping pulps to the lab, which gets us to the front of the queue immediately. Are there different analyses that are available to us that might give us a faster turnaround, but still give us all the information we need? So we're looking into that, because it is frustrating, and we do understand we live and die by news flow, and how the program is going. And the delay thus far is unfortunately not ours. It's the labs.
But it is something that could be resolved then in that case, because what you're saying here is that you guys are going to try and work on simplifying the process for the lab so that the lab can turn it around more quickly for you. Is that right?
That's right. And the lab's prepared to work with us as well, because I think they too understand it's it's taking longer than they would like as well. So very good relationship with the lab here in Kazakhstan, and I think it'll work itself out over time as well.
Where is the ALS lab relative to where you are in Pavlodar? Yeah,
so it's in quite a famous mining town in the center of Kazakhstan called Karaganda. It's about 5 hours sort of southwest of where we are in Ekibastuz. So very, very easy to get there. Beautiful road, freshly paved 4-lane highway. And Yeah, we're sending samples down every week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. Is that it's probably not all that far because you said it was in Kazakhstan, so that's a good overview. One of those holes did put you on the map for a lot of people. I suppose started paying attention to it after that. As I mentioned, the introduction, it was 936. I'm running up a little bit meters of 0.7% copper equivalent, and the market picked it up nicely. Rick Roll gave you props for it, and then he joined you in that financing because of it. What does this whole really add here to the system, though? I mean, is it grade, scale, understanding? What's in it for existing shareholders besides the added attention that you guys have gotten?
Yeah, sure. So we so the top part of the hole we actually knew about. It's been historically drilled, and then we had put some holes into the top, let's call it 300 meters, and that's a breccia zone, some nice splashy grades, but no one had ever asked the question of what's underneath it and put a deep hole into it. So what this hole did for us was we went straight down the throat of the breccia pipe, and kept drilling. The view that we want to see where is the porphyry, because you know with breccia pipes there is a porphyry out there, and it's close or likely to be close, and so this was the purpose of this hole. And what was very encouraging was at times when we've drilled this sort of breccia zone, we've got out of it and got into altered but relatively unmineralized rock. What was very encouraging with this hole was we got out of the breccia pipe at around, from memory, is about 350 meters, and the mineralization kept going. And it changed from argillic and phyllic alteration to starting to get into true potassic alteration at depth. Interestingly, we still don't think we hit the actual porphyry itself, but we know we're very close to it. So when you look at the bottom part of that hole, so from about 800 meters to 900 meters, we actually got very strong grades and a nice pickup in the copper there. So for us, that was very encouraging and very exciting, because we're in the area. We know we've got a porphyry there. We don't think we've hit it yet, and it's obviously going to get followed up with more drilling.
So is it, but then relative to, or like from the perspective of potential resource tons being added here, does this whole do that? Does it add potential tonnage?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, because it adds obviously depth, but there's no point in if you model it as an open pit. We've got a breccia pipe sitting at surface that's got very nice grades, often plus 1% copper equivalent at surface. We still don't think we've defined the edges of that breccia pipe, but knowing that there is mineralized country rock underneath that breccia pipe allows you to start modeling, I think, an open pit scenario, and allows you to go to depth.
Looking at the cross section, it was drilled down into the potassic core of that part of the system, into the guts of that system, essentially. Why did it have to be drilled like that? Because it was also almost vertical. But yeah, well, why did it have to be drilled like that? And really why I'm asking that is because I'm thinking, are you concerned that it might not be representative of what's there?
Well, no, so it was drilled at 70 degrees. So, we drill angled holes for two reasons. We obviously get a broader cross section of geology as you go deeper, and then of course as you drill a deeper hole, you really can't get to sort of 800-900 meters if you're drilling at 50 degrees. You've kind of got to steepen it up in order to go deep. So, the purpose of that hole was to drill down the throat of the breccia pipe and see what's underneath it. If you think about a porphyry, you have the intrusion punch into the rock. It's got a whole lot of fluids and mineralization sort of sitting above it, and that kind of brecciates the rock above it. So, it's often a good bet to put one right down the guts of a breccia pipe if you're looking for the causative intrusion.
And that's why it also had to have that steep of an orientation. I think it was. Would you say I think it was like negative 80 degrees or something that was noted on the news release. But
yeah. So it was 80 degrees. Yeah, it needed to be that steep in order for us to have the option to go to depth. I mean, if we got through the breccia, we hit barren country rock, we would have pulled the hole up at 50 meters into it. But because we kept hitting more mineralization, let's just keep it going.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. It also, given that the hole traveled kind of parallel, if you will, to the sheeted vein fabric and that was for hundreds of meters again, because it's a pretty long intercept. Are you now going to drill kind of shallower angle or perpendicular holes to understand the true widths of both the high grade breccias, but then also that potassic core of this current drilling?
Yeah. So you'll see as more holes are announced. With the exploration, there's a strategy to it. First of all, you've got to find what you're looking for. The direction that you're drilling, the angle that you're drilling, that's up for negotiation as you learn more about the geology. Once you actually make your discovery, or now you can start being more systematic about your drill program in order to ultimately end up as a resource. And so, the point that I would highlight on all of our three main targets right now, the drilling to date, really they've only had kind of anywhere from 5 to 10 holes into them, and so we're still very much in the exploration phase as we progress there. So I think you'll start to see us get more systematic with the same drill angles and the same sort of fences that we drill across the deposit once we sort of start to understand it a bit more. But this initial program is really we're looking for the beast right now.
So systematic was kind of the word that I was hoping for to hear coming out of you, because when the hole came out, some of the reactions that I saw online was, oh, this is a director special. They drill down the guts to have a news release, essentially, which happens in Canadian markets. So that's essentially what I wanted to address here. That's where I was coming from with that. What about given that the bulk of the hole of that 936 meter interval sits at call it roughly 0.2% copper. What's the minimum continuous true width at that grade that you would need to see before that starts looking economically relevant, considering the context of the depth and everything else?
Well, what we're finding with the porphyries in the Arras area is they're very gold rich. So in terms of sort of the copper content, the range seems to be in the kind of 0.2 to and some of the holes it gets as high as 0.4, but it's relatively low copper in terms of the overall grade. But when you add the sort of gold kicker to it, which that hole was half a gram gold, now it actually genuinely becomes something of significance. So we sort of look at mines like Red Chris, that are gold rich porphyries, as sort of being our model there, or Cadia is another good example, where you've got very, very high gold. We've got certainly reasonable copper, but relatively low grade, say to some of the big Chilean copper mines. But when you combine the metal factor together with silver and moly and whatever else comes along, net, you actually end up with a pretty good sort of copper equivalent grade.
Katie, a different age group though, and kind of different rocks as well, right? So you're mostly comparing it from the perspective of, it has gold. That's mostly what that comp is coming from, right?
Well, high gold porphyries, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And we think what we're seeing in the rocks, at least some of the targets that are emerging, are what they call an alkalic style porphyry, which doesn't have a lot of quartz veining. Katie is the kind of prime example of it. And typically they're very high in gold, which comes along with it.
Well, and actually this hole that you drilled was more gold than copper. And I do have a question about that as well. Are you going to chase it deeper from here though, or are you kind of tapped out from a depth perspective?
Well, it becomes a balancing act. If we think there's a reason to chase it deeper, we will. So, for example, the end of that hole ended in pretty good grade. We've got to ask ourselves the question: is there an Oyu Tolgoi hiding out there at depth? And we're basically in the same belt of rocks, the Central Asian orogenic belt, as Oyu Tolgoi. So it's not an unrealistic analogy to bring to the equation. So
how deep is Oyu Tolgoi? Like how deep does it extend to?
So I'm just going to say there's a series of deposits there, right? Because we looked at this, I think over a 10-kilometer sort of trend, you've got 7 different deposits, some of which are right at surface, but Hugo Dummett, I think, is down at 1,400 meters. And that's the jewel box, right? Yet, within 4 or 5 kilometers, you've got deposits that are separate porphyry centers that are sitting right at surface. And it took 130 odd holes, I think, to find Hugo Dummett. So, stay tuned.
What do you have on the checklist? So if I was like, Tim, please give me an Oyu Tolgoi, what would your shopping list be? What else would you have to check off your checklist there to deliver an Oyu Tolgoi? What else are you missing?
Well, I think Oyu Tolgoi, obviously it's a very nice analogy to have, but I actually think it is a good one. It's a structural corridor, 10 kilometers long. We've got a structural corridor 10 kilometers long, actually more. There's multiple porphyry centers along that structural corridor, which we're finding and learning more about with each drill hole. And really the question is there, where is the high grade copper zone? We've got the gold. We'd like to get into the guts of the high grade copper zone. And if we go back to that hole 32, which the 936 meter hole, the fact that we got into potassic at depth, that's where we would expect to find the copper. And obviously gold comes along with that as well. So, I think the model here is what we see at surface, there's some very good grades, but it's not the porphyry. The porphyry is at depth or off to the side, one of the two. And so, our job is to vector in on that. And we do that, we get into the guts of the porphyry, we'll find the copper and the gold.
How much more drilling do you think you need before you can start talking with confidence about true widths of both the high grade breccias and then that potassic core that we talked about? Like how many holes, what spacing, how deep, and so on?
Well, I think what you'll find is as we gather more information, the resource will grow. So, you don't find a philo or an OU Tolgoi overnight. It's developed over time. So what you'll see is we'll keep drilling, we'll keep stepping out and expanding what we are drilling. We'll look to ultimately do a resource report on that. But that won't be the end of the story. I think it will keep growing. Snowline's another good example of that model where it starts off with sort of a smaller resource, and it eventually expands over time to what you find today.
How far are you from a resource? Like, is the current 40,000 meters that you're drilling, is that going to be enough to put out an initial MRE?
Well, you certainly could put out an initial MRE. I sort of have the view that if you find something and you continue to step out and define more ore, why not wait a little bit and put out a bigger version of itself? But at some point, the market expects, and we will obviously have to wrap around a mineral resource. But this is something we're thinking about constantly, and we are sort of talking to resource modelers now with the view of just looking at the grade distribution. What sort of spacing do our drill holes need to be in order to get inferred and indicated and measured? So, it's certainly something we're aware of and we continue to work. But right now, we are still in exploration mode. We are still trying to understand 3 separate porphyry centres. And so I think this year we very much want to stick to our knitting and keep the exploration story ticking over here.
In other words, we'll see. You could have saved me that answer there and just answered that, but I suppose that's the geologist version of saying we'll see. It's and actually
strong silent type.
Exactly. As a shareholder, I'm actually I hope I'm wrong, but I assume that not all the holes will look like this one going forward, especially again, given how this one was drilled again under that angle. But do you have an idea of what percentage maybe of the total metal could sit in those narrower high grade zones versus the long lower grade intervals that you've seen before?
No, we can't really put kind of numbers to that right now. What I do like about what we see in those sort of breccia zones are they're very high grade, or they're nice high grade sitting at surface. And so if you want to build a mine and get a fast payback, that's what you need to have. Sort of high grade 2 or 3 years of mining potential.
I think the other thing worthwhile pointing out, Antonio, just so we don't kind of lose focus on it, is, and I know that you've had questions here specifically about hole 32, but just like at OU Tolgoi as an example, and we've got the added benefit that we're not We're not at 4,000 meters above sea level. We don't have mountains or glaciers or borders or any of these sorts of things that you need to deal with, even, between these porphyry centers. It's 200 meters above sea level. You can stand at one, and you can look that 5-6 kilometers to the south. So you're at Beresky North and you're looking down to Beresky Central, and you see the drill rigs, right? I mean, there's nothing really that impedes anything here. And because of the topography and the infrastructure and the ease to get around, this is all, our view, this is all one project. And that's what Oyu is, right? I mean, you've had open pits that have been mined, you've got undergrounds that are going. It's not as though you need to find 1 billion tons in one spot. I think if we can find, multiple porphyry centers where multiple 100 million ton deposits, it's all one project. Probably anything within a 10+ kilometer radius is all one project, right? So that's what we're trying to understand. And because you have cover and there's no geology that really reports to the surface, we're having to use good science to try and figure out, where they're at.
But how does that whole 32 tie into into what you're seeing here, though, Darren? Is that the center of the system? Is that the assumption right now, or do you think there could be a higher grade core somewhere else, or even multiple of those? I think, Tim, you touched upon it earlier, but yeah, how does the whole 32, how does that tie into the system?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think we have a full understanding of that, but if I was to guess, I would say it's off to the side or on the edge of the system. And as we drill deeper, we started getting into much hotter rock, but we never actually got into the guts of the porphyry. So I'm a betting man. I would say right now, and I think our geology team would agree, off to the southwest is a pretty good candidate for where the centre of the porphyry sits. So you can actually see that in our news releases with where we've got an IP map that's got a nice horseshoe shape, and the centre of that horseshoe is a strong candidate for where you might expect a porphyry centre to be.
So where are you drilling right now? Where are the rigs? Are there anywhere close to that, testing some of those theses that you're talking about there, or where are you drilling now?
So we've got another 6 holes with results that are pending in that area. We've then taken the rigs off and we've moved them to Beresky East and Beresky Central, and looking at some of the areas in between. One of the things to highlight is that whole Beresky trend has a very strong, coherent copper anomaly sitting at surface across the full 9 kilometres. So, as I say, we're in exploration mode, and we've got to ask the questions. We've got 3 known centres of mineralisation: Beresky North, which was where hole 32 is; Beresky Central, which is probably where we've got the most drilling to date; and Beresky East, which is interestingly a very gold-rich system where we're drilling 100+ metres at a gram starting at surface. And so we know we've got that, but then in between we've also got interesting targets that we're following up as well, that also have either epithermal or porphyry type signatures. So this year is about sort of getting to know the system and what we've got, as well as, I think, still sort of keeping the concept of ultimately a resource report and an expansion of the resource sort of at the back of the mind.
But again, you don't know when that's going to be, so you don't know if it's 2027 or even later than that.
I would say it's definitely going to be in 2020.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. You talking about copper, you've also changed the copper equivalent formula between the January and March releases. You've introduced recoveries now. Where the recovery numbers coming from and yeah, why introduce them now?
Yeah,
Uh,
so I think on that, with regards to the press releases, so on the copper equivalent, we don't have any sort of detailed metallurgical test work that we can refer to. So you'll see in the releases what we've done is we've taken a basket of other deposits, porphyry style deposits, and looked across. I think there's maybe 10 or 12 different deposits there, and taken a broad average, and then really done that in the disclosure. So until we get, some metallurgical test work done here, I suspect that's really the best way to go about it. Really, the best way to kind of, compare it is just to look at the copper and the gold separately, right?
Hmm.
And as Tim was mentioning, I mean, roughly probably 65% of the value so far is attributable to gold, and call it 35% associated with copper. Very, very little silver and moly credits here. It's really gold, copper.
Mhm.
And so that's how we've been disclosing it. And we've updated our assumptions on metal prices here a couple of times, I guess, over the last 2 years, really just to try and stay within the realm of what's going on in the metals markets. But I mean, the numbers we're using, of course, are still quite a bit lower than where we're at, and we think that's fair. We haven't touched it since.
Hmm. Well, you're right though. So this specific hole was more copper than it was more gold than copper. Excuse me, but you still did copper equivalent. Why? Like, yeah, what? Wouldn't you do gold equivalent? And is that how you're going to
Yeah,
keep running it?
it's a good question. I think, I mean, for every one company that's out there that's got some sort of copper gold asset, you've probably got 15 that are precious metals. This is clearly, it's a copper gold porphyry. I mean, I've had past experience in previous lives where you've got gold rich copper gold porphyries, and you could call them a gold asset with a copper credit. You could call it a copper asset with a gold credit. It depends if you're a gold company or a copper company that's mining it, quite honestly. And so for us, clearly these are, copper gold porphyries in terms of what order they come in. And as Tim mentioned, I mean, we're still not necessarily, we feel like we're in the guts of these systems yet. We've got 33 holes in. And I think it's important to remind folks that, copper is still an important aspect of this. I mean, if the copper wasn't there, is it a gold project? Would it work? Probably not. I think they both need to kind of rely on each other to demonstrate the metrics and the financials. So let's see where we end up. I mean, we're dealing with different deposits across 10 different kilometers, and just like some of these examples, the Oyu Tolgoi is an example. I mean, that's got some pretty high grade gold. You look at Grasberg, I think it's a byproduct credit. There's 1 million ounces of gold that are produced per annum. I mean, it's a copper mine. So that's kind of how we've approached it at this stage.
Yeah,
I'd,
yeah.
I'd, I'd also say, Antonio, you know, uh, you're going to recover the copper, and the gold is going to report with the copper. So the two metals in a mining scenario are going to be mined at the same time. So that does give you the sort of view of a copper equivalent or a gold equivalent in terms of how you value the deposit.
Right. Yeah. Well, so with the 40,000 meters, what else are you going to do? Are you going to test any of the step out targets, or yeah, what's the plan there?
Yeah, I think the full 40,000 meters is going to be focused on the Elemis trend, or the Berezki trend, I should say, and very much a part of that program is testing a lot of as yet undrilled targets that we've identified at the same time. So it'll be a mix of continuing to develop Berezki North, East, and Central, but then obviously testing what's in between.
Hmm. Are you going to be going to Imandai at all with this program?
Uh, Possibly. And I think I think Imandai is a tougher target. It's earlier stage. We are doing some geophysics on it this year, but it's almost we're spoiled for choice type scenario where we've got a 10-kilometre trend at Berezki where we are hitting good mineralisation. Imandai is sitting there as a 14-kilometre trend. I'm a little bit worried about loss of focus there, but I think once the geophysics is done on Imandai, maybe a rig shoots over there for a few preliminary holes.
Right. When would that be, or what's the expectation on timing there?
Towards the end of the season. So we've got geophysics underway right now. Results will come in, and I think we'll make a call whether we do that. Probably in October, let's say.
Okay. Yeah. How much money is all that going to cost? You raised a lot, so raising capital is not going to be a challenge, but having money is not going to be a challenge. But yes, how much is all that going to cost?
Well, the beauty of Kazakhstan, as you know, is how cheap the drilling is. I will say costs have gone up. When we first entered the country, we were paying around $85 a meter. We're now over $100 a meter. But I would say that the quality of the drill crews and the speed of the drilling has significantly increased as well. So it's not a bad trade-off to still have the sort of very cheap drill price, but now we've easily got the sort of production rates you'll find in a lot of Western countries. So if you just do the math, let's call it $110 a meter. It varies with the depth, but it averages out to that. Plus, a $40 assay sample, you're at $150 a meter all in.
So where does that leave you? Like, how much money are you going to have at the end of this program?
Yeah, so from a capital perspective, we're sitting just under 30 million bucks Canadian. And I mean, when we raised the capital here and closed it, 3.5-4 weeks ago, I guess, we were pretty consistent with the messaging that we've got ample capital to see us through to at least the back end of next year. We haven't set, budgets or plans yet for next year. But one thing we did do is we took the 20,000 meters we planned to do this year and moved it to 40,000. And so one could assume that, you quite possibly will see continued step changes, as we get into next year, but we want to get these assays caught up as well.
So is it fair to say resource before capital raise? So before you have to raise money again, you would probably have a resource out. Is that fair to say, or is it a stretch?
Hard to see. Let's see. I mean, I know you're pointing. And everybody wants, specific dates, but as you can, I think we have to kind of be able to ebb and flow here. You're going to start to see some of the research coverage. In fact, one of the brokers recently put out, kind of a high level sort of assumption, and you'll see analysts can start to put together numbers as they do with, companies such as ourselves. High level, but just to give a bit of a context in terms of what we're at. And I think that's, an important thing for folks to focus on, initially.
Yeah. I'm just essentially trying to figure out, with the money that you're going to spend, what are you buying? What answer are you buying? What's the main unanswered question that this money is going to answer for you?
Size and scale.
Yeah. Fair enough. Is it with the situation with tech, how does that tie into the money is what I'm thinking. And this is kind of moving on from that. The next and hopefully the last elephant in the room is or was tech, but that elephant has now kind of left the building. They're walking away after spending $5 million and generating 3 porphyry targets on a 54-kilometer trend, and they're declining. They're declining to do an earn-in option. Why? What did the technical team see there? What did they tell you that they didn't like?
Yeah, so I mean that was kind of in February, I guess, of this year, and I think let's wind the clock back to when we first put this in place. So 2023, right? Arras, big land package, on a known belt, hard to raise capital. Company really focused on trying to maintain a tight capital structure. You talked about it earlier, Antonio. I mean, there's no warrants outstanding, hasn't been now for call it over a year. And so Teck having a very good reputation in terms of partnering with juniors was one of a few companies that approached us around, potentially some sort of structure that would allow us to do some initial work on the broader land package. We were, pretty adamant that we wanted to try and maintain, 100% exposure and focus on some of the more advanced things, which of course Elemis fell into. It was December of 2023 when we entered into that initial sort of structure. And that structure was really to take the early stage licenses, so 1,900 square kilometers, where Teck committed to spending $5 million US. We were doing the work, given we had the team on the ground, and then over a 24-month period, take it from early stage geophysics, soil work, and then ultimately drill some targets and see what came about. And so, as you just rightfully pointed out earlier this year, identifying new porphyry trends undercover. But at that same time, what we've done is, you've seen that Teck's entered into a merger, and it's very close to, I think, completing here now with Anglo. So you've got a much bigger company, clearly focused at 100% on copper, or a good portion, anyways, of the bandwidth there is on critical minerals and on copper. Picked up some interesting sort of lower grade in the drilling. But I think for Teck, with the thresholds going up and still being really early stage, decided not to necessarily go to that next step. And that next step was then to commit to really investing up to $47.5 million on a much smaller project and bring the drills in and start hitting things really hard. And I think we're not really at that stage yet. There's still more earlier stage exploration that needed to happen. And when you kind of overprint that with the merger and the thresholds going up, et cetera, it made sense for them maybe just to step back and watch what's going on. They still own an 8.5% equity interest at the corporate level, but the whole land package is controlled 100% by Arras.
Right. So why I tied that into the money situation is because I'm thinking, what's going to happen there now? I mean, is it just hold the targets? Do you want to spend some money on them yourself? Do you want to look for another partner? Yeah. What's the plan?
So we are continuing. So we're dropping a bunch of ground that it was very, very useful from that work we did with Teck. That okay, we're going to let some of our regional licenses go or make them smaller, but we've also identified a bunch of mineral systems that through that work with Teck that never really got properly tested. Some of them didn't get drilled at all. Some of them got maybe one drill hole. So this year we've actually gone back with some more mapping, some more geophysics, mainly IP or targeted gravity and MT, magnetotellurics over some of them. Mm-hmm. And with the view that these things we know are there. We do want to get them to a drill ready stage. And the model is create the pipeline type scenario where we've got Elemis as the flagship. We do have other targets that we're building up to be drill ready. And we've been quite ruthless with dropping ground now that we don't think has merit, but we're also now staking additional ground that we think does have merit, and we will continue to follow some of that up too with regional work.
What are the holding costs?
So the regional program.
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
So the regional program continues for sure.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what are the holding costs on that ground while we're kind of on that topic of money?
Depends on the size of on the size of the licenses, but a lot of the holding costs get chewed up by a bunch of the work that we're actually doing already. So for a lot of that ground, we've met the holding costs already.
Do you see yourself? I mean, you said it yourself earlier that there's a lot of interest in Kazakhstan right now. Do you see yourself finding another partner?
Yeah, I think we're always on the lookout for partners, particularly on the more regional programs. You know, it's a very big country and it's a very big belt of porphyry belt that we're in. So, you know, Arras has its limited capital, which we're obviously putting most of it to work on Alamis. So, you know, the model that we did with tech makes a lot of sense, and we would do that again with the right partner.
So yeah, so similar model as what you would be looking for. That's something that I was going to ask as well. Yeah, that makes sense. What about the shareholding? I mean, Tech is still a significant shareholder right now. Are they giving any kind of indication of whether they want to keep supporting you, what they want to do with the stock, essentially?
Yeah. So they're sitting there at 8.5%. They didn't participate in the last financing, so they came down from, I mean, call it 10 to around 8.5. You know, I think it's a watching brief. I mean, it's probably fair to say, you know, we're finding, and we talked about it now in a few iterations here over the last few minutes, like we're finding quite a bit of gold with that copper. Tech's clearly, you know, focused on copper predominantly. I mean, historically, they've had quite a, you know, an interesting focus in gold in different parts of the world, or gold copper. But I know that the focus is obviously on copper. So I think it's just something that we need to watch and wait. I mean, Tech's been a great partner. They have a great history of working closely with juniors, and we've got a great relationship with them. And you know, they're here in Vancouver, just around the corner, so easy to communicate with as well.
Yeah. Would they let you know if they want to sell so that you can place the stock?
Yeah, so I mean that was even the discussion going back 3 years ago, maybe more, when they first made the initial investment. It's something that was important to us, and you know, having the ability to find the right home for it, and they've been clear that tends to be what they've done in the past, anyway. So yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to that relationship. And the importance on the reputation perspective that, you know, they want to be helpful and supportive, you know, not the opposite, regardless. So yeah, we're pretty relaxed about that. And as I said, they've been a great partner.
Yeah, good. Do you see yourself increasing the number of rigs and then spending some more money on that, or getting even more aggressive here?
Yeah, I think part of what comes with increasing rigs is increased infrastructure. So Kazakhstan gets fairly cold for 6 months of the year, and I've noticed my geologists start to moan about the cold around November, December. So we're actually looking at alternative spaces to grow the kind of ability to take on more rigs, and I think at the right time, I expect we will be. And then what comes with that also is obviously more people. You know, Kazakhstan is going through a mining boom right now. There's if you compare the mineral claims map to even 6 months ago, there's a lot of ground getting staked up, and what comes along with that is a shortage of manpower. So the other consideration when we expand the rigs is making sure we've got the right people in place to ensure we can handle that.
Right. Okay. What else are you going to be spending money on? A little bit more marketing. Is that going to increase now that you have a little bit more money? I guess, yeah, Rick Roll put in some money, so you might be going to his conference next year, I would assume. But yeah, what else are you going to spend money on?
Well, I think, on that one, I guess we'll see if we get an invite because I think it's invite only. Um, so, uh, so yeah, I think, we want to continue to make sure that we're on radar screens. Clearly, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we spent 60 or 70% of our time talking about Kazakhstan. You came, shot some video footage, all that sort of stuff helps. I think I think we've done a good job. I mean, clearly we're kind of the leading North American company in Kazakhstan, and Tim and I both felt that this was a place that should continue to get more and more interest. We're seeing that not only from the majors, we're seeing, of course, even more interest from the European Union, for example, and the continued investment that's come into the country through them. The U.S. government is spending more time. Tim and I were at a conference here, 6 weeks ago, and you had quite a contingent of representatives from the U.S. government there. Of course, there's always interest from China, Turkey as well, and this is about critical minerals and energy security, and when you overprint that with the improved infrastructure, coming out of Kazakhstan and into Europe, you're getting more and more sort of, interest around the country. So I think from that perspective, absolutely. And then, from a marketing perspective, now we've got a really solid base of institutional investors to go along with, family offices and retail shareholders that have been very supportive over the last 2 to 3 years. We found in this last financing that, we had very good support from current holders, money managers, investment managers that have been with us, going back, as I said, 2, 3 years. But now we've seen more and more interest from the institutional side. And really the first set of institutional investors first came into the company, call it 15 months ago. And we're continuing to build on that. And we've got some great partners that are alongside and are really supportive of us. So we've worked hard at that. And I think we've also managed to kind of maintain a pretty tight share structure. You talked about the fact no warrants out. These are all things that kind of come into play when we're trying to manage, particularly in a world that can be very volatile. Every morning you wake up, there's a new piece of news that changes everything. So for us, it's about maintaining consistency and trying to de-risk along the way.
If we talk about amounts, how much money do you think you're going to spend on marketing, though?
Well, how do you define marketing then? I mean, you talk about in terms of like conferences, but also is all your TSX compliance stuff, et cetera, or just
No, just like let's say conferences and digital marketing, so you like interviews and whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, you're one of them, I guess. We're pretty selective as far as that. We're not doing, 3 or 4 different groups like that. Conferences, we traditionally we've done probably, 2 or 3 conferences over the year. Maybe we see that grow, maybe 4, something like that. We'll definitely be at Beaver Creek in September. PDAC we find is really good because we always bring core over from Kazakhstan, and I mean, you were there last year as well. It's a great opportunity not only for folks like yourself, but also, all the other companies and majors and geologists get a chance to come and see what's going on in Kazakhstan and what the rocks look like. And then you mentioned a couple of other ones there along the way as well. But yeah, I think we're doing a good job on the perspective of the country, and we're getting on radar screens, and we want to kind of stay out in front of that as well.
It was PDAC 2024 where it was one of your geologists, you had geologist Vlado, who actually attracted me to the story. So he gets all the credit here, just so we're clear. But
and
yeah.
he's definitely, I think his secondary career will probably be in the movie business, right? From Serbia, and yeah, he's a great and very important part of our team.
Yep. And his third career would probably be beating Tim at table tennis, right?
Table tennis, that's right. Yeah, I think he's ranked 47th in Serbia, so he's right up there.
out of 48 players or something like that.
Out of 46 players.
Well, how important is table tennis? Even when President Erdogan comes to Kazakhstan, you get the video clips of President Tokayev and President
Yeah.
Erdogan playing table tennis in the presidential palace. So we are fully immersed in the Kazakhstan culture, as you can tell.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what the basement was about. Yeah, no, gentlemen, it's been. I think I've been through most of it. I'm definitely forgetting to ask you some stuff, but you're going to be back soon, I think, and then I get to ask it in a future episode. What keeps you up at night? What is you've outlined a plan here? You know what you want to do. What is something that could stop that plan or work against it? I guess.
Well, I think the world is obviously a fairly volatile place right now, and that obviously would play into sort of markets and sort of the regional side of things. But I would say I love the fact we're in copper and we're in gold, which kind of gives us a resilience, whichever way we turn right now. So not much keeps me up at night at this point. We've got a great team. We've got money in the bank. We've got a tight share structure, and we're not short of really high quality targets. So I sleep like a baby these days.
What do you think is a potential highest geological risk here? Is it continuity? Is it true width not panning out like you thought? What do you think is the biggest risk here geologically then?
Well, the biggest risk is these are old rocks. We're looking at 460 million year old porphyry systems. So that gives it plenty of time to be chopped up and dislocated with faults and whatever else. So Arizona's a very good example where you've clearly got huge porphyry systems, but nobody can find the guts of them. For us, that's always a geological risk, but the more we sort of drill, the more comfortable I'm getting that we're on the right track here to really tag into this stuff. So it's Mother Nature. You can get surprises, both good and bad.
Darren, what about on your end? What keeps you up at night when you talk to investors in Vancouver? What are they telling you? What's the biggest pushback they're giving you?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's only just in Vancouver. I think it's anywhere really. I mean, we talk about the fact that we've done a lot of work trying to just share our stories and our experiences around Kazakhstan, and Tim talked about the volatility in the world today. It's Kazakhstan has been just an amazing jurisdiction for us to work in. It's straightforward. There's a set of rules. You follow the rules, you're going to do just fine. But Tim's based over there with his family. We've got a very strong core group of predominantly Kazakhs that are there, and that's been a huge advantage for us to kind of move things along methodically. I think we still spend time talking to people about Kazakhstan and working there, but I think whether you see the majors and the mid caps that are showing up, I mean they're coming and visiting and they're understanding it because they're comparing it to other jurisdictions that they're working in. I agree with Tim. I mean we're trying to figure out what Mother Nature put there. In the ground. You don't know. I don't know. Shareholders don't know. There's one person that knows. He's way above us. And so that's what we need to kind of work through, but then, manage the risks along the way. And a lot of those risks are ones that we can't control. And so you need to make sure you have adequate finance. You're trying to raise capital at higher levels. So you manage your dilution so that when we do find things, shareholders are rewarded for the risks that they've taken on alongside with us, and that's why we've been so diligent. And one of the reasons you didn't see during the lean years, us go from 60 million shares out or 70 million shares out to 600 million shares out, and that's very easy to do. You're you're not going to be nearly as happy with your position, Antonio, if that's the case, because the stock goes from, 50 cents to 65 cents, right? Not 50 cents to $1.50.
Yeah.
So it's a core part of how we try to manage and try to how to focus. And but yeah, I mean, it's we're at the pointy end, right? We're trying to find things.
Well, talking about the valuation and kind of coming full circle to what you said at the beginning, are insiders going to be buying here in the open market, or rather participating in financings? Again, if you think it's good value here, put your money where your mouth is, essentially type of thing. I know you're drilling, so that puts you in blackout and whatnot, but are there any plans for insiders to load up here?
So there won't be any other financings we'll need to do for some time. I mean, I think what you can see, probably the most recent reference to that is there was expiring stock options that were exercised, and save for a small amount that was withheld for tax obligations, everything was held. So I think 3.8 million share or stock options that were exercised, and it's about 350,000 shares that were sold. Everything was retained by insiders. So that's management and the board. Yeah, I mean, we're in it to win it here, I think, and most of us have got a pretty significant portion of our overall investment portfolio tied up here. So far, it's working. We'll see.
Yeah. I know you guys have to run here in a couple of minutes. Let's do a brief summary at the end of the Catalyst calendar. What am I going to see if I start paying attention to your news releases now, and I haven't paid attention before? On a month-by-month basis, what am I going to see here over the next, call it 6 months?
Sure. So we've got, more than 20 holes that are in the hopper right now, either, in the assay lab or on their way there, getting cut to go. As Tim talked about, we've had some delays with regards to the assays in terms of the cadence of them coming out of the lab. We are looking at making some modifications in Kazakhstan for that. But we've got, another 6 holes coming from Bresky North that'll be over the near term. I think over the next, 2 to 3 weeks, we should start to see some of those come out. You've got holes at Bresky Central. You've got holes at Bresky East. You've got new targets down at Novi as well. We've drilled. The rigs are coming back to Bresky North. The other thing that, I think you want to be watching for here over the next month or so is all the top of bedrock work that we've done. Tim talked a little bit about that as well, but we completed that, and we're waiting for the assays to come back on that. And that's really, north of Bresky East, and that whole sort of corridor between Bresky Central and Bresky North, getting through the cover and seeing what we can find. So it's part of that, other target area that's in between what's connecting, what's creating that sort of, copper gold geochem at surface. Tim?
Yeah, I think with four drill rigs turning, there is going to be a lot of news flow. I suspect the way the assays will work is the dam will break, and we'll go through a period where, every couple of weeks potentially there might be a new news release coming out with results. That still depends on the lab, but I can sort of see how as ALS sort their logistical challenges out, they'll get faster and faster.
And hopefully I'll be along for the ride with you guys on that, and we'll follow along with interviews, and you get to give me some of these updates like the one that you've given me today. So for people watching and listening, whatever I'm forgetting to ask here, let me know, and I'll ask it in a future interview. For now, I know you have just a couple of minutes before your next conversation there. So I'll just let you go. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Awesome.
Thanks, Antonio.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
And before everyone leaves, though, I still have a couple of more things to say. The fact that this company was interviewed here today doesn't mean they're necessarily a good nor a bad company. We're not here to endorse or attack anyone. We're simply here to ask a few questions. If you find that we have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, please let us know by emailing antonio@resourcetalks.com, and we will try to correct that mistake in a future conversation. If you made it that far, you probably know this, but I'll remind you nonetheless. Mining is a risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation, as mineral exploration, development, and extraction is an extremely risky industry. where the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving parts, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, hiring methods, and many others, as well as other things that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more. Too many to list here, really. Moreover, these companies are typically in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which often results in shareholder dilution. They raise money by issuing new shares. Even if the CEO promised they won't have to raise capital anymore, I've seen it over and over again. It still can, and it does happen, which is why you need to stop and think. You need to do more research and not rely solely on what the company tells you. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'd be better off understanding that all company communications, albeit this interview or their website, their presentation, their news releases even, and of course their social media and everything else, all of that is intended as marketing. And although we at Resource Talks do not make buy or sell recommendations, even if you ask us, we just don't do that because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of our business, which sells content producing services to these companies. Even though we don't do that, many accounts and channels out there do that. Exactly. They do give out direct recommendations, even though they are often paid for opinions and they're worth just as much as you paid for them, which is to say nothing. And you should be aware of that inherent bias. You should not blindly trust people on the internet. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it's just safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a big dose of skepticism. And just assume that the party telling you about it is biased, oftentimes in multiple ways. They might own shares, they might be paid by the companies, or I should say they often are. And that bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentive, but instead double check if what they're saying is true by using setterplus.ca. Unfortunately, at least in my understanding, nobody out there has any special predicting abilities. The CEOs don't possess any superior knowledge and they cannot know about what's going to go up, what's going to go down, or what's going to go in circles. And none of us know whether any of the company's activities that we discussed today will result in a success. Again, given that we're talking about very high risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. The vast majority of the times it ends in failure. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, we won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the company. So even if we did ask a few tough questions in this conversation, don't rely on this being all of the important and tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts. They require rigorous, I'll try that again, but they require rigorous due diligence. Resource Talks and its hosts cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold the company, the channel, or its host responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use the information you're just presented with. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein does not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or instrument or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of this business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences howsoever caused arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published and distributed by Resource Talks, or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all viewers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say it's a lot of lawyer talk, just saying you should not blindly trust us or anybody else on the internet. And you should always do your own research, as cliche as that may sound. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. Setterplus.ca is where you do research. That's an official government website. That's where you find the company's official filings. And I encourage you to read and analyze the management information circular, the financial statement, the management discussion and analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents at the very least. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. As mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are very high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I'd listened to more often earlier on in my career, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it." Unquote. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you a great day ahead.